Earlier this week, our own Shams Charania reported the Bucks briefly engaged in trade talks with the Knicks this summer about a potential deal for two-time MVP Giannis Antetokounmpo. Yesterday, Giannis responded to the report by reaffirming his commitment to Milwaukee. Here's what he had to say.
I think I've communicated with my teammates, communicated with the people that I respect and love, that the moment that I step in on this court or in this facility and wear this jersey, the rest does not matter. I'm locked into whatever I have in front of me. Now, if in 6-7 months I change my mind, I think that's human too. You're allowed to make any decision you want, but I'm locked in. I'm locked into this team. I'm locked into these guys, to this group, and to my coaching staff, and to myself.
All right, and we welcome in Brian Windhorst to the show. Great to see you, Wendy. How long do you think Giannis stays in Milwaukee?
He just gave you the answer to that question. He said 6 or 7 months. He didn't just pull that number out of thin air. He thought very carefully about how long it was until the end of the season. And what he basically said there is, I'm going to give it another evaluation at the end of the season. And look, Giannis said yesterday what he had to say. He's starting the season with the Milwaukee Bucks. He made that decision over the summer. Doc Rivers had some comments yesterday. Doc said what he had to say, which is that they've got to focus on this season. But you didn't see a denial from either of them. The Knicks and the Bucks certainly talked in August. And I'm going to say, if you look at the big picture, it's a little bit disconcerting if I'm the Bucks that I made this crazy maneuver in July, waiving Dame Lillard and then signing Miles Turner, both of them $100 million maneuvers. And then in August, Giannis said, hey, what about the Knicks? That's not necessarily a good sign. If Giannis truly wanted to get traded, he probably would have approached the Bucks in June, and he would have done some maneuvers that made it clear that's what he wanted. But it is very clear to the whole league that Giannis' situation in Milwaukee is probably short-term. Stephen A., could they surprise the league this year and have a great run in the Eastern Conference? I've seen stranger things. The Eastern Conference is not particularly strong, and that's why Giannis is leaving the door open. While everybody's being respectful, the league is preparing for the end of Giannis' tenure in Milwaukee. That's not an insult. That's just the reality. And you can hear by Giannis' own words and actions, he's thinking about it in the back of his mind too.
Well, first of all, a couple of things. Let's get out the way. New York Knicks going to the finals. New York Knicks going to the finals, Woody. I don't know if you heard me say that. I believe the New York Knicks are going to the finals. Now, it is by default, no doubt about it. Jason Tatum with the torn Achilles. Damian Lillard torn Achilles, and now he's no longer in Milwaukee with Giannis. He's in Portland. Tyrese Halliburton, he's got the torn Achilles. I get it. There's a lot of things that happen, but damn it, that ain't my problem. New York Knicks going to the finals. Let me get that out the way. Secondly, if you're the New York Knicks and you had an opportunity to get Giannis Antetokounmpo, I don't give a damn what you have to give up. The cheerleaders, the security personnel, the concession work. I don't give a damn what you got to do. If you could get Giannis to the Garden, I mean, that would have been spectacular. And I know that that's something that the New York Knicks believe they have a chance of pulling off. Here's my problem. The New York Knicks messed up, and this is where the Mikal Bridges name comes into the equation. For those of you out there who don't know your basketball, Mikal Bridges can play. He is not a scrub, okay? He can play the game of basketball, and oh, by the way, he's a very reliable asset in terms of showing up to work each and every single day, okay? Even though he has some complaints about Tom Thibodeau, the now former coach, running him into the ground, running the starters into the ground. But Mikal Bridges is no all-star. And not only do the New York Knicks paid him and then rewarded him with a $150 million extension, which I believe in today's NBA economy he deserved, by the way. The $150 million is not an issue for me, Wendy. The issue has been, is, and will always remain unless the New York Knicks win a championship with him as a pivotal component to that aspirational goal. You gave up 5 first-round picks for him. Too much. So when you're talking about acquiring somebody like Giannis Antetokounmpo, it's not just about a Karl Anthony Towns going out the door, or Mikal Bridges, or an Anunoby, or somebody like that. Milwaukee would want draft capital. You don't lose a Giannis Antetokounmpo for nothing. You don't do that. You can't let him walk out the door and get nothing in return for that level of greatness, who's averaged 30 and 11 over the last 3 years, who's averaged at least 28 and 11 over the last 6 years. He's Giannis Antetokounmpo, one of the top 5 players on the planet Earth. This is who he is. And if you have an opportunity to get him, you have to explore it, you have to pursue it, and you have to pursue it with rigor. And the belief is that that's a place he would want to be. Not Los Angeles, okay? It would be New York, maybe even Boston, but definitely New York. So I appreciate Giannis, who's a real one, who's not a phony, who doesn't double talk. He doesn't do anything. He's been very authentic. He's looking at a Milwaukee Bucks squad, and he's saying, this is an organization that drafted me, that believed in me, that has been very good to me, that helped me capture a championship because they got me the assets that I needed in the past. But since that time, I've gone to a semifinals, and other than that, I've been bounced out of the postseason, at least 2 times, 3 times. So that's what he's faced with now, and looking at what they're going to be able to do. A Cole Anthony is there, Miles Turner is there, a Kevin Porter Jr. is there, stuff like that. That's not going to win you championships. So he's looking at the Milwaukee Bucks and saying, are you really going to be able to get anybody here for me? Because if they could, Giannis wouldn't be thinking about leaving. He's thinking about leaving because he doesn't believe organizationally that they're going to be able to supply him with the requisite parts for him to definitively compete for a championship. And that's where the trepidation is.
You're exactly right, Stephen A. Actions over words. He watched their summer of moves as sort of out of the box as they were, and in August, here he is trying to get traded to the Knicks. That's the actions. And I actually think that the Knicks are in decent position here, and let me tell you why. Because the Bucks do not control their draft for the next 5 years. They're still paying off the debt from building that championship team and those championship contenders. So if the Bucks ever reach a position where they feel like they have to trade Giannis, they can't tank. They don't control their draft. So if you're going to make a Giannis trade, it's probably going to be a player-based trade. The difference about the Knicks and the difference about the other suitors for Giannis is that the Knicks went ahead with their business this summer. If you remember, when Kevin Durant was traded to the Rockets, the price wasn't that high. And people wondered, why didn't the Rockets have to pay that much? The answer was Giannis. Let me explain. There were several teams that were on Kevin Durant's list. San Antonio, Miami, for example, who had the assets to trade for Durant, but they held on to them. Why did they hold on to them? Because they knew the possibility that Giannis could be there. Okay? Why did the Golden State Warriors spend the entire summer leveraging Jonathan Kuminga into a contract that they could trade? Kuminga had the ability to put a no-trade clause in that contract. When the dust settled, he got his money, but he got a 1-year deal with a no-trade clause. That's so that they can make a trade involving Kuminga. So you look at Golden State, you look at San Antonio, you look at Miami. Those are 3 teams that have put themselves in position to bid for Giannis if he comes to market, whether it's in this season or not. Where New York is different, as you said, Stephen A., the Knicks made a decision at the end of July to extend Mikal Bridges. That took Bridges out of the ability to be traded until February 1st. The deadline is February 5th. In any sort of a deal between New York and Milwaukee, Bridges is almost certainly going to be involved. And I don't blame the Knicks for that, Stephen A., because as you said, the Knicks believe that they can win the East this year. So why are they going to wait around for Giannis to make up his mind? They got to set their team. I was with them last week in Abu Dhabi. They are in a really good place mentally, the Knicks. Bridges is running the floor. He's got a place in this Mike Brown offense that's more expanded. Maybe they get to the middle of the season and they like the hand that they have. But don't forget that. Remember February 1st, because if we get to February 1st and things are going a certain way in Milwaukee and things are going a certain way in New York, Bridges comes back on the table potentially.
Well, there's a couple of things. Number one, the New York Knicks are in a very good place. By default, I might add, but damn it, that's other people's problem, not the New York Knicks problem, okay? So they are in a very, very good place. And you had to pay Mikal Bridges because that's Jalen Brunson's boy, not just because he could play, but this is the same Jalen Brunson that could have waited a year and then signed his multi-year extension for at least $100 million more. He didn't do that. You know, he signed early, gave the Knicks a break, which ultimately facilitated them being able to make moves to acquire him in a trade. So you had to pay him the $100 $150 million, and he's worth $150 million. In today's NBA economy, Mikal Bridges is worth $150 million. Let's just be honest about it. The flip side to it, however, is that even though the draft picks doesn't necessarily matter because of what you highlighted, Wendy, it still matters to New Yorkers as we look at your championship aspirations and what may potentially derail you. And here's where it gets interesting with Bridges, and it really, really matters, because not only did you trade those picks for him, you know those picks along with players could have facilitated you getting a KD, could have facilitated you getting a Giannis this summer, but it didn't happen. So now you're looking for more from Mikal Bridges. The same Mikal Bridges that basically complained about Tom Thibodeau running players into the ground. Tibbs is out. Mike Brown is in. He's more personable than Tibbs, obviously more offensive-minded than Tibbs, and more open to utilizing his bench, especially in the aftermath. You could talk about Mike Brown all you want to in terms of the job he may have done in Cleveland or the job he may have done in L.A. But since he was assistant under Steve Kerr, he was a different kind of coach when he was in Sacramento. Coach of the year, had a top-rated offense. The man knows basketball. He knows what he's doing, and he's considerably better when he was in Sacramento than what he was in Cleveland and L.A., no matter what anybody says. So you take that into account. You bring him in New York City. You look at Clarkson and others that they got. So you've got a bench now that you can rely upon. There's a reason to play 8 or 9, particularly during the regular season, as opposed to going with 6. Remember, Kenny the Jet Smith had the line of the year when he said Tom Thibodeau wouldn't want to play 9 dudes in a baseball game. That's the line of the year. The line of the year, because that was Tibbs' issue in a lot of people's eyes. That's not Mike Brown's issue. So that's good. Last point that I want to make. You know me and my Knicks, and you know how I would feel if Giannis came to New York City with Brunson and had Jalen Brunson with him, okay? You know that. But I will say this. You want to talk about unfairness in the National Basketball Association? Don't let Giannis get to Golden State with Steph Curry. If that happens, oh my Lord, it wouldn't be fair to the basketball world for those two to be wearing the same uniform on the court, especially if you kept the Draymond Green, who's your point forward facilitator, who's your energizer bunny, and who feeds Steph Curry better than anybody on the planet. If you had those two in the same uniform as Giannis Antetokounmpo, forget the betting odds and all of that stuff in Vegas, Golden State would coast to the title. That's all I got to say.
Well, that's the perfect segue, Stephen A., because there's so many factors there. A bunch of teams, every team would probably want him, but who can actually make it happen, and where would it really work? So, Wendy, it's not the Knicks. Who should be aggressively pursuing Giannis here?
Yeah, well, I definitely think so. First off, we got to point out the Bucks' intention and Giannis's intention is to make the best of this season. Again, he didn't come out and say he didn't want to be in New York. He came out and said, I could change my mind in 6 or 7 months. Let's not forget he said that. We're going to remember that for a while. So let's see how the Bucks season progresses. The East is not strong. The Bucks could make a move, but if you get to mid-January, which, by the way, is when Jonathan Kuminga could be traded, and I'm not saying Kuminga's name because I think Kuminga is like the centerpiece of a superstar transaction, but he would have to be included in a type of move. The state has a couple of young players on their roster that are interesting. Most importantly, after this season, Giannis only has 1 year on his contract. So whether you got into Giannis potentially wanting to revisit this in midseason, or whether you got into it in the 6 or 7 month timeline that he has given us so generously, you would have to look at a place where Giannis would want to be. This wouldn't be an open bidding war. You wouldn't have a situation like you had with Dame Lillard, where you could have a market he doesn't want you to come in. He would have some control. And part of me believes the reason he didn't go full bore into the trade demand this summer, where he sort of sat around and didn't make noise about it in June and July and didn't make a move until August, was because he knew that he would have much more control next year. And so if that happens, then you're looking at a team like Golden State or a team like New York who could leverage Giannis's desire to be in a big market, which I think is going to be a factor.
Listen, the bottom line is this. Giannis is going to go where he wants to go. It ain't going to be Milwaukee sending him where they want him to get. Giannis is going to go where Giannis wants to go. And the New York Knicks, I can tell you, believe that if Giannis is not in Milwaukee, there's no place he wants to be more than them. I'm not saying it's true. I haven't spoken to Giannis, but I'm telling you the New York Knicks believe that's the number one destination he covets if he's not in Milwaukee. If that is true, look the hell out, because you can't rule out anything. Like you said, February 1st. Keep your eyes on that date. You can't rule out anything with the New York Knicks. And if the New York Knicks don't win the title, you certainly can't rule out anything next summer, because you know there's no excuse that the New York Knicks, Cleveland, Detroit, they're coming. I truly believe that. But there's no reason to think that the Knicks can't win the East this year. They don't do that, MJ. They don't do that, Wendy. All bets are off. And, oh, by the way, you might want to pay attention to how the season is going, because the New York Knicks might have foresight. And if they see that there are personnel that they may need to unload, because the more you expose them as the season continues, the more attrition might kick in and the worse they may look, that might be impetus for them to make a move in February instead of waiting until the summer. You never know.
Yeah, may the odds ever be in your favor if you're going after Giannis. We will be circling our calendars for 6 to 7 months from now. Wendy, thank you for that.
Wanna try to boast at what I look like. Keep them going, try to wear, I pull up long range. Jimmy with the heat, I'm on fire. It's NBA over here,